Right. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you and call to order the September 12th Port Orchard City Council regular meeting. I'd like to remind us of our guiding principles, which we happen to have on the wall over there. And in the actions that we are about to take, are we raising the bar? Are we honoring the past but not living in the past? Are we building connections with outside partners? And is the decision-making process positively impacting diversity, equity, and inclusion? Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, we have a published agenda. Councilmember Pichardi, do you have an amendment?
Yes, Mayor, I move to amend the consent agenda this evening by removing item J. That's an adoption of a resolution approving an amended memorandum of understanding with the Port of Bremerton for waterfront parking. My understanding is there's a few more edits that need to be made, and that will be brought back to us in a near to come meeting.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Councilmember Pichardi, a second by Councilmember Clausen. And you're absolutely right. I just didn't want you guys to touch this twice. The port gave us some new information today, and we need to determine the costs to provide those additional services and then get them to agree to those costs. And then we'll bring this back at a future meeting. So with that, you'll be voting on removing item J from the consent agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, item J has been removed from the consent agenda. Any other proposed amendments to this evening's agenda? Councilmember Clausen.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the agenda as amended.
Seconded.
We have a motion by Councilmember Clausen, a second by Councilmember Terneri to approve the amended agenda. All in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Agenda has been set for this evening. So we are to our first citizen comment period. We have two citizen comment periods. The first is for any item on this evening's agenda. The second citizen comment period is for anything that anyone wishes to address the council over. And tonight's a little bit unique because we have a public hearing. So if you're here to provide testimony in relation to ship to the street vacation, you would provide that testimony at that point in the meeting. So, and we'll call on you at that point. So if there's anyone wishing to address the council on any item on this evening's agenda, please step to the microphone and state your name for the record. And anyone online, you would use the raise your hand feature and the clerk would bring you into the meeting. And I'm not seeing anyone online or in person, so we will close the first citizen comment period. We're to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve? Councilmember Clausen.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Clausen, second by Councilmember Diener to approve the consent agenda as amended. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda has been approved this evening. We have three presentations tonight. So, and they're all good information. So the first of which is Deanna Dawson from the Association of Washington Cities is here to address you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here with all of you. Let's see if I can advance. Here we go. I'm Deanna Dawson. I'm the CEO at the Association of Washington Cities. I've been there for about a year, and it's been my pleasure to work really closely over that past year with your mayor, Mr. Rod Patonsu, who is our immediate past president of the Association of Washington Cities. So I'm here tonight to talk to you a little bit about our association, what we work on, and also talk to you about how engaged your city is in that and the benefits that that plays for your city. So about us, we are a membership organization. There are 49 membership organizations like ours in the country. Everyone but Hawaii has an association sort of like the Association of Washington Cities. Hawaii only has one city, and so they do not have a city association, but all the other states do have that. We're not unique, but we are unusual in the fact that all 281 cities in the state of Washington are members of the Association of Washington Cities, although it is a voluntary association. And we're really proud of that. I think that really goes to show the value that we bring to all of our member cities, large and small, across the state. And we are celebrating 90 years of service this year, 2023, and we're excited about that. And our mission is to serve our members through advocacy, education, and services, and we're a 501c4. We actually have 4 separate but related corporations at AWC. AWC proper, which we'll mostly talk about tonight, but we also have an employee benefits trust where we provide healthcare insurance to many of the cities in the state of Washington, including your city. We also have a risk management service agency where we provide effectively insurance coverage for cities for the incidents that might happen in the city, and you're a part of that as well. And we also participate in the AWC Center for Quality Communities, which is a 501c3 working on civic engagement. And we also give out some great scholarships to high school students through that. So Port Orchard is, the mayor likes to say you're a full service client of AWC. You're involved really in all the aspects of AWC. So as I mentioned, you're part of our Employee Benefits Trust. And also Debbie Lund, your HR director, serves on the advisory committee that gives recommendations to that board. You're part of our risk management service agency, which saves you quite a lot of money in the city to be a part of that. And your clerk, Brandy Wallace, serves on the operating committee for that board. And then we also have a workers' comp retro program, which helps save you money on your L&I claims. And your finance director is actually the chair of that committee. So you're really very involved, and we're really excited to be here tonight, not just with the mayor, who's one of our board members, but also with all your staff members who are so active and engaged in AWC. So we do have a board of 25 members, of which your mayor is the immediate past president. And that board represents districts all over the state of Washington, as well as we also have 2 members from the City Managers Association that serve on the board. The rest are elected officials, and they set the strategic goals for the association, which are right here. And I encourage you to look at our strategic plan, which we're really proud of that as well in terms of how that serves our member cities. Your mayor also serves on our executive committee, which also serves as the board of our retro program. It serves as our budget committee, and it serves as the board for our 501c3 arm. And they meet monthly. And so, you know, one of the things that we like to say, or I like to say, is if you're not at the table, you might be on the menu. And the AWC is really the way that you can stay at the table and not on the menu in terms of how you interact with the state and state agencies, the state legislature, the governor's office, and so forth. And so we give cities that seat at the table, but I really say in terms of Port Orchard, you know, you're not just at the table, you're really, you know, you're setting the menu for that table because you're so actively involved in so many aspects of AWC. And so, you know, especially your mayor as the past president of the association, he's really given your city a big seat at that table. Here's some photos from some of the things that your mayor was up to in the past year, interviewing the governor, meeting with your 2 U.S. senators, meeting with your congressman. And it really pays off. I mean, I think I was actually supposed to be here a couple of months ago, but my son was sick, and so I had to change to tonight. I know that at that presentation that night, you were talking about your downtown revitalization. You all have gotten about $165 million in terms of funding for your community from state and federal sources. And that does not happen by accident. And that does not happen in every community. That happens because you have a city that's really active and involved in really telling the story of Port Orchard's needs and what's going on in your community, and making those relationships with your federal delegation, with your state legislature, with the governor's office. And it really pays off. Those relationships really help people understand the story of what's going on in Port Orchard. And it's been great for your community in terms of that. So again, I mentioned that AWC's mission is to serve our members through advocacy, education, and services. In terms of that advocacy, we do have a legislative priorities committee. Mayor Patonsu also serves on that. He chaired it last year. They met today for the final time to make some recommendations on legislative priorities, and our board will adopt those next week. So I don't have those for you tonight, unfortunately, but I'm sure the mayor will tell you about them in a couple of weeks when they are adopted. But all of our legislative priorities are really driven by a statement of policy. That's kind of like the Constitution for the Association of Washington Cities. It's updated every 4 years, and we're going to update it again next year. That's a place where some of you can get involved too, because we'll be looking for people to serve on a statement of policy committee from all of our 14 board districts across the state. This is what drives our advocacy. Things like local decision-making about cities making decisions for themselves and not having the state or federal government tell you what's best for your residents, letting your residents and the people who are closest to the people make those decisions. Equal standing for cities, making sure that cities are treated in a way that shows their value, just like counties are, or just like the state is and the federal government is. Making sure that we have strong partnerships with the counties, with the state, fiscal flexibility and sustainability. No unfunded mandates for cities is a big thing that we talk about. Ensuring that we are looking at diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And then nonpartisan analysis and decision-making. It's really important to us that we're doing things where we work together across party lines, and we're making sure that we're doing what's best for cities, not just what one party or the other wants us to do. So that's what really drives our advocacy. We have a federal advocacy agenda. We have a state agenda. We did quite well, I think, in last legislative session. And again, we'll be adopting next week our new legislative agenda. But the main thing I want to let you know about advocacy is that it's not just something that your lobbyists do for you. It's not just something that AWC lobbies on your behalf or that you do during the legislative session, but it's really something that goes on year round. That advocacy in terms of building those relationships with your legislative delegation, telling that story about the needs of Port Orchard and its residents, that's something that you really need to be working on throughout the year. So I would encourage all of you on the council, and I think that you all are doing a good job of this now, but to really be sure that you're meeting with your legislative delegation throughout the year and ensuring that they understand what's happening in your city, the challenges you're going through. You know, you're probably getting ready to really kick off your budget season in earnest, making sure that your legislative delegation understands those budgetary challenges and needs that you have. The other thing that AWC does in terms of our mission, it's advocacy, education, and services. And so in terms of education, we do a ton of training and education for elected officials and for staff. I'm an attorney by training, and I sort of liken it to having to get your CLE credits, your continuing legal education credits. I really encourage all elected officials to do that continuing education and to educate yourself about the role of being an elected official, because there's a lot that goes into it. And I think you all are probably aware of that it's not always what you thought it was going to be when you ran for office. There's a lot that goes into it in terms of land use decisions and budgetary factors and so forth. And so making sure that you're really well educated is something that we help elected officials do at AWC. We have big conferences. We just held our most recent conference in Spokane in June. We do this Certificate of Municipal Leadership program. We have trainings that are specific to mayors at mayors exchanges. And then we do a elected officials essentials training, which I'll talk more about in a moment. I would really encourage all of you to get your Certificate of Municipal Leadership. It really shows your community that you are taking that time to better educate yourself about all the roles and responsibilities of being an elected official. We offer credits around legal requirements, around finances, around land use and community planning, around effective local leadership, and around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And if you get 30 credits, you get that certificate. And if you get 60 credits and then also take on a leadership role, you get your advanced certificate of municipal leadership, and your mayor has an advanced. It's a pretty rare group that gets that, but your mayor has that. This is a slide that shows you a little bit about how much training we did last year. We had over 1,200 people do trainings with us in person, plus about another 1,000 doing online trainings with us. 208 out of the 281 cities did do some form of training with us in the last year, and 96% of those said it was good or excellent. I don't know about those 4% of people. I'm not sure what to say about those. But it shows how many certificates of municipal leadership we did in 2022. We're on course to do 2 to 3 times that much this year. Lots of people getting their certificates this year as we kind of come out of the pandemic and people come back together in person to do that training. We're also a really good resource for you in terms of data, in terms of surveys, publications. And so I know that your city staff probably use these things very frequently. We do a salary and benefit survey, so you can look at what employees are paid in like roles across the state. We do things about how taxes and fees are charged in different cities, so you can compare yourself to other cities. We have lots of handbooks and guides around topics like homelessness and housing, all sorts of things. And so I really encourage you all to check out our website, and that goes for the public as well, that those resources are out there for people to learn more about what goes on in city government, because it's really important work that you all do. So in terms of being an active AWC member, just would encourage you all to think about some different ways that you can get involved with AWC. We have 25 board members. You've already got one from your city here with the mayor there, but we also have a legislative priorities committee. We're getting ready to start that up again for next year pretty soon. And so we'll be appointing folks to that. So if you're really interested in legislative items, we have a nominating committee where we screen people who want to be on the board. We, as I mentioned, are going to be updating our statement of policy. We have an audit committee, bylaws committee. We have so many different things. So if there's something you'd like to get involved with AWC, let me know. And I'm sure we can find a role for you in some fashion. And even if you don't want to take on an active role with AWC, there's lots of other ways to stay engaged and to learn more about us. We have City Voice emails we send out. We do a great digital magazine. The latest version of that just came out, and that we're doing one hard copy issue a year, and that'll be coming to you in the next week or so. We have lots of online education and training sessions. And again, as I mentioned, we have a great website with lots of resources to help you educate yourselves about the role of the city and so forth, and lots of in-person trainings as well. The other thing that I want to make sure that everybody is aware of is that we host an event called Elected Officials Essentials every other year during every local election year. So it's really geared towards newly elected officials to make sure that folks have all the information they need about their legal roles and requirements. We also do training on Public Records and Open Public Meetings Act, which you need to do as an elected official. And this serves as your official training that you can do there. And it's also just a great way for folks to meet their fellow elected officials from around the region. We are going back to doing these in person this year after a little bit of a hiatus during COVID. And we're going to be doing them at 9 satellite locations around the state of Washington. So Gig Harbor, I think, will be the closest to you all. So mark your calendars for December 9th. Encourage all your newly elected officials if you have. So I know you have at least one council member who's not running this year. So, but it's really something that all of our elected officials can benefit from. I know some elected officials who've been in office for 20 years, and they come to this every time because they always learn something new. I know that your mayor's coming, and encourage all of you to come to that as well, and get to know some of your elected officials in the region, as well as to be a resource for the newly electeds all around the region who will be there. So that is a little bit about us. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I'd also welcome any feedback that you all have about how AWC can better serve your city. As I mentioned, you're maybe the most active city in the state. And so you may not have a lot of questions about how to get more involved for Port Orchard because you're so involved already. But if you have any feedback for us, I'd really appreciate it. We just did a membership survey, which hopefully some of you took. We're just rolling the results of that out next week at our board retreat. But if you have feedback for me tonight or in the future, that's my email address, and you're welcome to reach out to me at any time. So questions, comments?
I guess I'd like to start just and speak to what a gratifying experience that being the president was. And it really provided an opportunity to engage and connect with people that I likely wouldn't have, and allow the mayor of Port Orchard to walk through many doors that I may not have walked through, to visit the White House, to go meet with our senators and the governor and so on and so forth. It was just a very, very rewarding experience. And I thank you for that opportunity. So,
well, I want to thank you too. You were the first president that I worked with at AWC since I've only been here for a year. So I don't have anyone to compare you to in that regard, but I will say but I've worked for about 20 years in local government. And I will say you've got a mayor here that people should be really excited about. He's so engaged in the work that he does. He's somebody who was really, could get into the weeds, but he could also work at the high level with us at AWC. And it was really great. He also, has a love for this community that he talks about so frequently and shares with everybody around the state, that really makes him an effective leader because he just has this passion for Port Orchard. And it's really cool to see, as well as the first lady of this community also is a great spokesperson for the community. She does a great job of interacting and engaging as well. So
Councilmember Clausen, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, I guess I could just say that our mayor must be number one then, since you have no one to compare to. I'd like to pass on a compliment, I guess. I attended the annual conference in Spokane and was extremely impressed with the organization. Of course, I'll give some credit to the mayor, but I'm sure you had something to do with the way that was very well organized. The training sessions that were available were incredible. I dropped in on a number of them and was information that I had not had before, and I've been doing this for a while. So it was exciting to be a part of cybersecurity and things of that nature. Not to mention, I came right back to my council after that and shared some of the information I received at the vendor show.
Oh,
And
nice.
the council has agreed to actually reach out and acquire some of the things that I was able to share with the rest of the council. So I, in particular, want to thank you for that. That was a time well spent and
Oh,
very informative. So
I'm so glad to hear it. Thank you for sharing that. I did not pay you to say that. I did not give
no,
you.
no, you did not. And I actually paid to attend, but it was very, very well organized. A lot of great information and
Good.
came home with a lot of good information.
Well, I hope you will join us again next June. We'll be in Vancouver this next year. So hopefully you can join us, and I encourage everybody to join us
Yeah,
at that
I
conference.
would as well. I would encourage fellow council members to make the time and attend because it was well worth the effort.
Great. Thank you.
Councilmember Trenary.
Yeah, Deanna, as the newest council person sitting up here, I've been to the last two. I was in Vancouver 2 years ago and in Spokane as well with John Clausen this last year. And the educational opportunities were invaluable.
Great.
Being new, not really knowing what I was getting into, it was very, very helpful to kind of get my roots in and become a little more grounded and understand a little bit more about what my responsibilities are as a council member. I found the networking opportunities to talk with the other council folks from across the state and mayors also to be just super, to help me get a better understanding of the other cities are having the same issues and a lot worse issues than we are. So I found it very valuable, and I will be attending again.
Good. That makes me really happy to hear. And I do think, we're going to update our mission statement next week, Mayor. And that's one of the things that's not in our mission statement, but that networking opportunity, I actually think in many ways, that's the most important thing that we do at AWC is connecting people with their peers across the state, because it's a hard job. And if you're, there's no need for people to just completely reinvent the wheel. Figuring out from your peers what they're working on is really helpful. And also, it's not always an easy job to be an elected official. And it's in terms of, you don't always get appreciated as much sometimes at home. And so knowing other people who are going through that and who can be your support system is helpful too. And I will say, sort of on a closing note, that I am a recovering elected official. I served 2 terms on the Edmonds City Council. And so I really appreciate the work that you all do. It's so important. The work of cities is really the closest to the people. And again, that it's nonpartisan. You're looking out for your whole community, and it's the most important job in government, I think. And so I just thank you all for the work that you do, both all of you as elected officials, but also you as staff. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, just if I can pile onto that theme, the mayor's exchange, they have them 2 times a year, and to go to, spend a day with other mayors, and we got this challenge that you can't figure out, or sharing your experience because you've dealt with that issue. I just find them so valuable to gathering point and to network and to share experiences is so valuable.
I always say that being a mayor is a very lonely job because you're literally the only person in your city who has that job. And so there's nobody else in your own city who can exactly understand what you're going through. So.
Councilmember Clausen, you got?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one other compliment and thanks for the employee trust benefit. I think that is something that I know Port Orchard has participated in for years and has benefited from that program. You guys have some wonderful policies available to us that we've been able to share for our employees. And And also my day job is working for Kitsap Transit, and we're one of those unique animals that are a part of the AWC benefit package as a transit agency. So thank you for that as well.
Great. Well, I'm so glad that you're a double client then, and we appreciate you doubly for
Well,
that.
I
Don.
only get the insurance from transit, but it's great. Thank you.
Yeah, great.
Councilor Chang?
I had a quick question. I agree with Mark that the training is invaluable at
Yeah.
the conference, the annual conference. Do you know if there's any chance the location may change from Vancouver or the east side of the state? Does it ever change?
It does. And we rotated around because it's such a big conference and we have, 500 plus attendees. There's a limited number of places that we can host it. But interestingly enough, we're putting it on to the December meeting. We're going to be going out for RFP for new sites. And so we're really looking at different places around the state. We've done it in Yakima in the past. We've done it in Wenatchee. Wenatchee's a little bit small at their conference center, but they're looking to expand it. We are going to look at Tacoma, Bellevue. One of the things I will just tell you, this is a little inside baseball, is that many cities have policies that say that they can't cover travel that's less than 50 miles away. And so actually doing it in like an urban center sometimes means that less people can come to stay at the conference. Anyway, that's sort of inside baseball. But we are going to be looking at some other sites. But yeah, Vancouver and Spokane are the biggest conference sites in that are not in Seattle, I guess I should say, around the state. So we've done the Tri-Cities as well. That's another place that we've done them.
Other questions? Deanna, thank you for taking the time to come over to Port Orchard and share this presentation. It's greatly appreciated.
It's great to be here, and thanks for letting me be here in your beautiful city tonight. I'm gonna actually head back and get my kiddo from the babysitter. So I'll leave you to the rest of your meeting, but thanks for having me tonight. It's nice to see you all. And Rob, I'll see you at our board retreat next week.
Yes, you will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're on to our next presentation. Joe Morrison from KEDA. This is a tough act to follow, Joe. You got your A game? And I see he brought his board chair, Aaron Leadham, with him. So, Joe.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to follow that, but I would like to introduce our board chair who will say a few words to kick us off. This is Aaron Leadham, who is the general manager of Kitsap Mall and who has been involved in a variety of things in Kitsap civic life for many years. So Aaron, you want to provide some thoughts to start?
I think I'm his best board chair also. Am I your only board chair?
You are not, but you're the best.
Oh, okay.
I might say that next year, but
I just want to thank you all for having us here this evening. When we embarked on One Kitsap, which Joe will go into the details for, we went in with the unanimous backing of everybody on KEDA on our board. The concept of what we all know and how we all love Kitsap and how it's growing and the differences that are happening all over here. It's got to grow in a positive way. And the idea behind KEDA being the throat of economic development, the one place we go to help the entire peninsula, that's where our One Kitsap comes in. And I'm going to let Joe go through the details on it, but I want to thank you. I have worked with a lot of you guys in different parts of my life. I've really enjoyed being in Kitsap to be able to do things like be in a council chamber and be able to make a difference. So thank you what you guys do too. Yours, Joe.
Okay. I'll also echo that. Thank you. Thanks for your public service. Mayor Putansu, thank you for being on our board. Councilmember Cucciardi, thank you for being on our board. Councilmember Lucarelli, you were on our board for such a long time. Thank you. Councilmember Clausen, in your day job, thank you for being an investor in the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance. Our community is growing, period. This community didn't used to grow as much as it grows now. Port Orchard knows better than anybody, any community in Kitsap, that we're growing and we're growing aggressively. And things have changed since the pandemic. People are finding their way across the water, finding their way to this part of greater Seattle. And we're seeing growth because it turns out if you don't have to go into the office 5 days a week and battle traffic, an hour plus each way, you might choose a different form of life. And people are doing that and you're seeing it in our community. So I'm going to talk about what the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance does a little bit, what One Kitsap is, talk about how we arrived at this, and talk about where we're going. The Kitsap Economic Development Alliance is your economic development council. We're the council for all of Kitsap, from Port Orchard to Point No Point, from Bainbridge Island to Seebeck to Olalla to all places in between. We cover the entire peninsula and how different it is. We know Bainbridge and Bremerton don't always have a lot in common, and yet they still might benefit from working together because Bainbridge Island needs people to work there. And Bremerton has an availability somewhat of workers, but we're going to talk about that a little bit in a moment. This is the first 5-year regional economic strategy contemplated in our community's history. It is proposed to begin next year in 2024. It'll take us to 2028. And we got here through about 18 months of work. Last summer, we hired a firm, National Community Development Services. There's all kinds of stuff in your packet about it. And they started off with one-to-one confidential interviews asking, what is it that you want out of your economic development agency? In January, we moved into 60 plus people that we interviewed from all aspects of Kitsap economic life. Councilmember Cucciardi, I think you were there. We had Superintendent Winter join us. We had the commanding officer of the base join us. We had Chairman Forsman join us. We had the CEO of Safe Boats join us. We wanted to understand what is it that we're seeing in our economy, and where is it that you want the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance to make an impact? And what we find in our economy is something that mirrors what's happening in the economy nationally as a whole. We have a housing issue and we have a workforce issue. And I'd like to thank Port Orchard again for stepping up and doing its part on the housing side, where you're creating capacity for people to live in our community. The two are intertwined. If it's expensive to live somewhere, it's hard to live there and to have a job there. And so when we talk about the workforce aspect of our economy, we have hundreds of open positions, typically hundreds of open positions at our major employer, Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, hundreds of open positions at St. Michael Medical Center, which is our new medical center that serves not only this peninsula, but the peninsula adjacent to us. Hundreds of open positions at Port Madison Enterprises. So as we evolve our Economic Development Alliance into doing more for our community and taking the next step, one area where we think we're going to take a significant step is in workforce, and I'll talk about that in just a bit. This plan before you in your packet is results-oriented. It involves long-term thinking with near-term execution. It has clear goals and metrics and accountability. Our goals are in 5 years to be instrumental in increasing the GDP of Kitsap County by 3%, to work with enough employers and firms that we touch 2,500 jobs, to be instrumental in creating new business capacity in our community, new buildings, because we find that our companies in this community are growing, but it's not easy for them to find locations to grow into. And that's important as well. And critically, as I discussed workforce earlier, we know that there are lots of open positions. We would like, our goal is to see a 25% decrease from year-end highs in 2022, a 25% decrease in the amount of open positions by the time we hit 2028. So that's how we got here. What is it that the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance does? We do undertake actions in new business development, finding places for our companies and firms in our community to grow into, but also positioning our locations for firms to come here. We work really on the bread and butter of economic development, which is business retention and expansion. That is so critical. In a given year, we will have upwards of 100 interactions with firms, helping them with a variety of technical assistance. We operate a government contracting program called the Apex Accelerator that helps firms obtain government contracts. Unsurprisingly, we have expertise in Navy and federal contracting. We work with more than 30 startups every year. We engage in 30 different recruitment opportunities every year. We connect firms to 6 or more export opportunities every year. We conduct 30 or more trainings every year. And beyond that, we have a footprint in entrepreneurship and innovation. We conduct research. We just published the top employers list in Kitsap within the last 2 weeks, based on year-end 2022 numbers. We monitor cost of living in our community. And of course, we produce economic events and research and publications so that folks know what's happening in our economy. Every year we have an annual economic forecast where we talk about what are the trends both nationally and in our community when it comes to the economy. So what's new at the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance? What are the things we think we're going to do that will help make an impact in our economy? Well, we propose growing our footprint in two places. One is new business development capacity, and the second is workforce. When it comes to new business development capacity, Kitsap is 395 square miles. It is the third smallest county in all of Washington state. And that means that our future to some extent is finite. And we are going to grow, as I said earlier, but how we grow takes leadership, vision, integrity, and accountability. And so one of the things that we propose doing is undertaking a land and industrial building survey where depending on the size of the smallest level of analysis, which might be as little as 1 square mile or 1 acre, we identify what land is available in our community, where we might be able to develop that. And the reason we're doing this is, if you look on any given day, you might find 1 to 2 10,000 square foot buildings available for commercial or industrial use. That's probably simply not enough. So step one is understand what's here and understand what else we can do. I talked a little bit about workforce. Some of the workforce initiatives we have contemplated under this plan are, one, to stand up a program in conjunction with the military so that we can retain more of our transitioning military members. There are likely in excess of 3,000 transitioning service members every year out of the Navy. There's also a significant trailing spouse population. And as I discussed earlier, we need workers. So we anticipate standing up a targeted program alongside the Department of Defense to do that. In addition, the other area that we would like to work in is increasing the availability of youth workers recently graduated with 2-year certificated degrees. Whether they're in the trades or whether they're joining our medical needs, which are significant in the community, we want to see more workers with 2-year employment degrees in our community out there and part of our workforce. So those are some of the initiatives that we've contemplated under this plan. With greater abilities, with greater impact, there is a need for greater resources. We are proposing a new investment request for all the jurisdictions and municipalities in Kitsap. Cities above 15,000 would invest $20,000 a year in the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance. Cities above 40,000 would invest $50,000 a year. Cities above 10,000 would invest 15. And so in closing, we find ourselves in a very privileged position in Kitsap. We have rising asset prices. We have communities where people want to move to and live. And we have the ability to work together and to collaborate together across jurisdictions to determine our own economic future. To be sure, there are pain points and we're all feeling them. There are backups in traffic. There are questions about whether we have enough infrastructure. Things in our community are changing. But this community is going to grow either way, and we want to be instrumental in helping ensure it grows the way we all want, because we live across the water. We live in this community for a reason. We value its natural beauty, and this growth will take leadership and vision to see it through. That's my presentation. I'd love to take your questions.
So Joe, you're asking for an additional investment from local governments, but you're also out with a campaign soliciting contributions from the private sector too. And what are you asking for from the private sector? Just put that into perspective.
Right. There has been a sea change, I would say, in the way we're approaching the private sector. Some of our private sector investors are investing $50,000 in the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance, $35,000, and this is a really big change for them. Previously, a lot of investors on the private side would sit at around $10,000 a year. We think it's critical for our alliance's future to embrace the private sector and truly expand the footprint of our public-private partnership.
And so Joe is asking for an increase to our contribution, and as we work through our mid-year review process. And just, I tend to support that and I don't tend to, I do support that and that request. So you'll be seeing that in our mid-year review process. But I just wanted to put some context to that. It's not just asking it for local government. They're also out getting very large investment from the private sector to enhance the services that KEDA is providing. So that, Councilmember Clausen?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, Joe. I think your approach and the direction you're going makes a whole lot of sense. I really like the aspect that we're going to be focusing on not only encouraging outside businesses and what we have available here for those folks to come here, but also working to help fill that unmet need that we have. And you reach out to the military is a brilliant idea because there is a large number of folks that transition out of the military on an annual basis. We know that by our neighbors. There's a lot of our neighbors that are retired military that stay here. So I think right on. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Councilmember Foster?
Yeah, I would just share that I had the privilege of sitting through a lot of the process, developing what they were doing, one Kitsap, and it just makes so much sense on so many levels. I think it was weighted heavily to municipalities in the past, and I think they're trying, as Joe said, to kind of change those seas and to get more private, the private sector involved. Economic development is important to the city of Port Orchard. It's important to the residents of Port Orchard. And if you look at the investment we have been making or the request that's coming at us, it's just something that we simply cannot do as a city today. If we were to try to take that on ourselves, we don't have that sophistication. We don't have the qualified staff and the dedication that they have. And I think it's a tremendous investment into what they're doing to partner with them and to benefit the city of Port Orchard. So I too would fully support it and appreciate the opportunity to have a seat at the table and really understand where the plan came from and how it developed over time into a final product and ultimately approved by the board.
Other comments or questions for Joe? All right. Thank you, Joe. You got a close second, Deanna.
Okay, well, I'll take it. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Joe.
So Jackie's been hustling around. I understand we have a water leak downstairs. We are on the 3rd floor. So I'm confident we're not going to have to evacuate the building unless it gets really bad. Okay. All right. Is it related to the construction or is it just something? Oh. Okay.
I guess I should turn that on. Something that they've dealt with before,
Okay.
but unfortunately we've flooded part of the police station, so.
Oh.
Whoopsie.
All right. Fortunately, we're in the middle of a remodel.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So we are to our 3rd presentation, and Jackie, I'm glad you made it back. You
Take a deep breath.
take a deep breath, and our 3rd presentation is the stormwater comp plan. And I know you and your team have been working on this for a number of months and are ready to share this with the council and the public. So take it away.
Yes, actually, the utility committee saw this several months ago and we have been trying to get it find room on the agenda since then. Brandy, are the presenters there?
I did bring them in, so they should be on the panel.
Okay, so Matt Fontaine from Herrera, who was the consulting firm that was responsible for developing the plan, and also Tagi Acker from FCS did the financial leg of the plan. And they're here tonight with a short presentation, and then they're here to answer your questions.
Okay, go ahead. Looks like they're muted. Yeah.
Jackie, do you want me to say any introductory words before you play the presentation?
Do you happen to have you or your counterpart there have the video available to show via Zoom? You have the ability to share your screen?
I do have the ability to share screen. I did not have the video queued up, only the presentation. If you give me a moment.
I have it, but because when I play it, when I unmute Zoom, I will get feedback. Yeah. So
Okay. Yeah, just give me half a moment here.
okay. Yeah, it's something we didn't think about until just now. I'm like, oh, I can't unmute because
Oops.
it will be.
For a couple seconds.
Gotta get the right version. One moment.
Nothing like working under pressure.
I'm gonna mute myself for a second to make. I'm muted. The trick's gonna be making sure my audio carries through to the presentation. Any tips on buttons I have to click to make that happen?
We have a backup plan if you're not able to. I think we have somebody that's in our recording room that's online Zoom that might be able to play it if you're not able
All
to.
right, I'll get share sound. Did that, is the
Yes.
image queued up now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so just as like a really quick preamble. Some of the committee members have already seen this. We tried to abbreviate it a bit for this audience to make it shorter. So some of the content's been clipped, but in essence, this is about providing stormwater infrastructure to serve the existing and future community members and at the same time protect environmental resources. And I'll push play and I'll see if I can put myself on mute so you don't get feedback from me. Tagi, since I can see you, would you give me a thumbs up to make sure the audio comes through when I push play?
Hello, my name is Matt Fontaine, and I'm an associate engineer with Herrera. Today, I would like to give you an overview of the City of Port Orchard's first Stormwater and Watersheds Comprehensive Plan. The mission of the program is to regulate and manage use of the city's stormwater system as required by the city's NPDES permit, while conscientiously managing and protecting surface and receiving waters for public health and enjoyment. This mission statement helped shape the plan development. The figure on the right side of the screen outlines the two-phased process we used to develop the plan. Phase 1 included evaluating the city's current stormwater program, coordination with staff and the public to develop an initial list of capital project needs, and completing the receiving water conditions assessment and prioritization, which is one of the requirements of the NPDES permit under SMAP. Phase 2 built upon the work done in Phase 1 and included defining program recommendations, defining CIP projects, and completing the Stormwater Management Action Plan. 3 levels of service were defined for stormwater program improvements and CIP implementation, and then each level of service was integrated into the financial analysis. And then the final plan was developed. To meet the city's long-term goals, 3 levels of service were defined as part of the plan. Level 1 represents activities that meet current NPDES permit requirements, potential future permit requirements, and essential program activities. Level 2 includes everything in Level 1 and several additional improvements to expand public education and stewardship opportunities, implement the new asset management program, and increase staffing to adequately inspect construction projects and private stormwater facilities to improve environmental protection. Level 3 includes everything in Levels 1 and 2 and represents staffing and funding to move towards achieving the city's goals. This level of service would result in the greatest benefit for the community and the environment, but would have the highest cost. Level 3 also includes expanding public involvement and environmental monitoring activities. Implementing the SMAP and meeting NPDES permit requirements in the future will require additional staffing and funding. Current staffing and funding will not be adequate to meet the permit requirements and make progress towards the city's long-term goals. This slide illustrates the additional full-time equivalent staff, or FTEs, and funding that will be needed to achieve each level of service. Additional staffing and funding will be needed in Level 2 to support the city's source control, private facility inspection, education and outreach, asset management, and O&M programs. In addition to the staffing and funding needed for Level 2, Level 3 includes an increase in education and outreach and capital planning support. Now that we have discussed the staffing and funding needs, let's turn our attention to the CIP projects. This slide illustrates the CIP implementation schedule for Level 1. In addition to the ongoing conveyance system improvement program, this schedule has 3 capital projects to be completed during the 6-year planning period. Those include Annapolis Creek Culvert Replacement, the South Sydney Regional Facility, and Ruby Creek Culvert Replacement. The rest of the needed capital projects are scheduled to occur partially or fully outside the planning period. The schedule shown here can be adjusted over time based on project priority, complexity, and coordination with other city projects. More information about the CIP projects and the implementation schedules for levels 2 and 3 can be found in Appendix B of the plan. Now I'll turn it over to Tagi to discuss the financial analysis.
Hi, my name is Tagi Acker. I work for FCS Group, and we helped out on the rate study portion of this project. Before we get into the results, we wanted to share a little bit of history of the city's stormwater fee and some of the challenges that it has been facing over the last 6 or 7 years. We put together this chart that shows the city's current monthly single-family stormwater rate. It's also the rate that applies for commercial and multifamily customers, which scales up based on impervious surface area. So it's $14 per month per impervious surface unit, or ISU. It's been $14 per month since 2015 and has not changed since then. Compared to that $14 per month, we also graphed what the rate would have been if annual inflationary adjustments had been applied. That line represents the annual inflationary change based on the consumer price index for the Seattle, Tacoma, Bellevue area, which has increased by about 30% June 2015 through the end of 2022. So that $14 would be roughly equivalent to $17.90 per month, just accounting for annual inflationary adjustments. In addition to general cost increases, there's also been significant growth in development. While new development does result in new customers and may help pay that monthly rate once they're connected, new development might also require additional services and can result in additional costs for the utility to build and then maintain that infrastructure that serves new development. And lastly, the city has gone through another iteration of the NPDES Municipal Stormwater Permit. That's National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. And that latest permit went into effect back in 2019. That has resulted in increased regulatory requirements for the stormwater program, which of course has impact on operational requirements and costs for the utility. As noted earlier in the presentation, 3 levels of service were developed for the rate forecast, each with increasing staffing levels and additional capital project costs. Each level of service increases the speed at which capital projects are completed and assume fewer and fewer external capital grants. Level of service 1, shown in this column here, would add 1.7 FTEs through 2029 and fund about $36 million of capital projects. Of that, about $15 million would be funded through borrowing. In order to fund these capital projects, the additional FTEs, and the debt service associated with that borrowing, the monthly rate would need to increase from $14 per month, which it is today, up to about $25 per month by 2026. Level of service 2 would add 4.7 FTEs, and that's shown here in that middle column. And in addition to those FTEs, would fund about $48 million of capital projects, net of grants. And of that $48 million of projects, $30 million is assumed to be funded through borrowing. So to fund these obligations, the monthly rate in this scenario would increase from $14 per month up to about $31 per month by 2026. And lastly, in level of service 3, this scenario assumes adding 5.5 FTEs by 2029 and funds about $58 million of capital projects, of which about $34 million would be funded through borrowing. In order to fund these obligations, the rate would need to increase from $14 per month, which it is today, up to about $43 per month by 2026. In any of these scenarios, in 2027 and beyond, it's assumed that annual inflationary adjustments would also be needed in order to keep up with general cost escalation, both on the operating and capital side of things. The city's current monthly rate per impervious surface unit is $14 per month, shown there right towards the middle of this survey group. The increases for level of service 1 in 2024 would leapfrog Gig Harbor's small rate. Level of service 2 would leapfrog 3 other cities, where it would increase from $14 up to $18.34. And then lastly, level of service 3 would increase above the Gig Harbor medium rate, where that 2024 rate would be $20.37 per month. While these comparisons can be interesting, it is important to note that this is really an apples to oranges comparison. Each of these communities has unique service areas with varying needs, different customer bases with different mixes of residential compared to commercial or industrial customers, and all of these variables can have an impact on rates. In summary, each level of service requires rate increases. Currently, the city is unable to cover its 2023 through 2024 budget, and therefore is drawing down on existing reserves. Some level of rate adjustments is needed. Level of service 1 adds about $3 to $4 per month per year through 2026. Level of service 2 adds about $4 to $7 per month per year through 2026. And level of service 3 adds anywhere from $6 to $13 per month per year through 2026. In addition to evaluating the monthly rates, we calculated a stormwater capital facility charge, otherwise known as a CFC. Now, CFCs would be imposed on newly connecting customers and are intended to recover a proportionate share of the utility's investment in system capacity. The city of Port Orchard already has water and sewer CFCs, but does not currently have a stormwater CFC. Water is at about $12,000. The sewer treatment is at about $4,000, and the sewer general facility charge is just under $9,000. CFCs cannot include grant-funded assets, so because grants vary by level of service, so do the calculated CFCs. The lowest CFC is associated with level of service 1, which assumes the most grants, and the highest CFC, little to no grants, is associated with level of service 3. In summary, level of service 1 CFC is about $2,500. Level of service 2 CFC is about $3,100. Level of service 3 is about $3,900 per impervious service unit. We recommend adopting a stormwater CFC that matches the adopted revenue requirement level of service. For example, if the city decides to adopt level of service 2 for its monthly rates, it's recommended that you adopt level of service 2 for about $3,100 and not higher. Now, we should note that the CFC is optional, and the numbers presented here are what we refer to as the maximum defensible CFC. The city, by policy, can choose not to adopt a CFC or even adopt a CFC that is lower than the numbers shown on the slide.
Concludes the presentation portion. We'd welcome any questions.
Questions? Councilman Clausen.
I guess my only question is, seeing it on the screen is one thing, but if I could get a hard copy, that would
Yeah.
be much better.
Yeah, we'll get that emailed out to you guys and actually probably post it on our website would be helpful too.
Thank
And
you.
then, I mean, we've got more work to do, more discussion to have it. This is the, the bookends. We've got minimum compliance, and if we want to do something more with stormwater beyond that, then we know what the costs are and what the funding sources need to be. So there'll be much more conversation about this, and probably nothing implemented till after the first of the year. This is the plan. Councilmember Diener.
I thought it was interesting to see the bar chart that would place us where we are with respective communities. But I also wonder how many of those communities haven't updated their fees in some time as well. So that maybe might be worth understanding.
Yeah.
Whether that's,
Yeah, whether they're undertaking this process too, and if they're going to be jumping from that
Yeah.
point. And
Yeah.
do we know that at this time, or was something we can research as far as our additional conversation?
We can look into that a bit. Just off the top of my head, looking at that regional stormwater rate slide, I know Pierce County is undergoing a rate study, as well as Kitsap County. The other ones, I'm not sure, but we could look into. But that's a very good point. Some of these communities may be beginning this type of process, in the middle of it, and others might have completed this process, a year or two ago. And those green bars that we showed on the screen show the 2024 rates for the levels of service, 1, 2, and 3. Many of these communities may be also planning to raise their rates for 2024.
Yeah, excellent question. And yeah, good information to have. Councilmember Rose Pepe.
This may be a little bit sophomoric or too not thought out, but does this also take an effect on the rates on increase in population? Or is that based on our current population?
The rate forecast that we put together does include a measure of customer growth, which, as they, connect to the system, they'll begin paying those monthly rates. So that is a part of what we looked at. So that does reduce the overall burden a little bit for other customers, but the overall need is such that the dollar rate must increase as well, even though the city is growing.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kuchar.
Yeah, just so we don't create confusion, just for example, when we went through the similar process with water, right, and looked at our operating costs and then our CFCs for water, to compare ourselves to other jurisdictions can be a little bit dangerous because it's really based on the infrastructure here in our city. Is there applicability to the stormwater issue, just as there is with water when comparing to other jurisdictions? Because you're not necessarily comparing apples to apples because our systems can be so unique. It's a question. Yeah, because that was a big discussion point we had with waters. Like, be careful is who you're comparing to, because we need to take care of our infrastructure and our growth, and let's not necessarily compare ourselves to neighboring jurisdictions. It's kind of a 180 from what we had discussed with the water issue.
Yeah,
I think that's a fair comment, but I also hear people trying to compare us to other jurisdictions.
But as long as they get that full
Yeah.
understanding, right?
Yeah.
We're just not setting it based on an average. We're not setting it based on, we want to be, the top of the scale. It's really based on the needs of the infrastructure of
Right.
our city and the usage of our city.
And so maybe that would be a good exercise, is to look at more comparable jurisdictions. That bar chart had some counties in there, and maybe if you walk them out,
yeah,
it would look differently.
yeah. Counties have a different environment than we do. They
Yeah.
don't have a built environment the way that we do. And it's important too to remember the rates are really for the maintenance and the operations side of it. And then the capital, and we don't have a capital facilities charge currently. And we have tremendous capital needs. And that's probably the most important element to this is the capital facilities charge.
And it's not going to get any easier with stormwater.
No, none of this stuff is getting any cheaper. Councilmember Clausen.
Yeah, my aspect is just, I guess I need to be reminded of, I certainly understand the cost of operating and maintaining, and I understand you mentioned some of the capital projects in level 1, but there's a lot of dollars that are proposed for capital improvements in level 2 and 3, and I guess I need to have a little bit better understanding of what it is we're talking about needing to do with those capital improvements, so I can have a better understanding of what is it that we're going to be working on.
Any other last comments? All right, thank you for joining us tonight, even though it was virtual.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
we're gonna move
for having
on
us.
from the presentations now to the public hearing we're holding tonight. Holding a public hearing on vacating city right-of-way, a portion of an alley off of Taylor Street and a portion of Austin Avenue between Taylor and Smith Street, portion of Sweeney Street off of Sydney Avenue, and most of the alley between Taylor and Division Street, a portion of the alley off of Klein Street between Sweeney Street and Taylor Street. I hope that made sense to everyone. Ms. Wallace, this is your item.
All right, give me just a moment to share my screen. All right, good evening, Mayor, Council. So the petitioner is Kitsap County, and they have filed a petition to vacate city right-of-ways as they are the owner of the presented properties. As the mayor stated, the proposition for the first vacated alley, the first proposition for the street vacation is an alley in a street, which is Klein to Sydney and Division to Taylor. In a few moments, I'll show you a map to give you a visual of where these street vacations are. Then there's a proposition 2A, which is an alley, Austin to Sydney, and then Taylor to half of the block between Smith. And then proposition 2B is a street vacation as well, and it is Austin Avenue to the half block between Smith. The request is for a portion of the alley off of Taylor Street and a portion of Austin between Taylor Street and Smith Street, which is an approximately 9,974 square feet. And again, it's a portion of Sweeney Street off of Sydney Avenue and most of the alley between Taylor Street and Division Street. That particular area is approximately 14,838 square feet. And the final one is a portion of an alley off of Klein between Sweeney Street and Taylor Street. And that is approximately 1,498 square feet for a total of right-of-ways and alleys approximately being 26,310 square feet. The petitioner owns all of the adjacent adjoining properties. Therefore, they own more than 2/3 of the abutting property as required by RCW 35.79.01. And as well as Port Orchard Municipal Code 12.08.010. On July 25th, 2023, the council adopted resolution number 79-23, setting a public hearing on this petition to vacate the city right-of-way. On August 18, 2023, the city posted the required public notice in 2 conspicuous places in the alley sought to be vacated, and on the same day placed a copy of the adopted resolution in 3 of the most public places in the city, 1 being at the City Hall Bulletin Board, 2, the Kitsap County Administrative Building Bulletin Board, as well as the Port Orchard Library Bulletin Board. As required, notice was given to the abutting property owners, of which are all owned by the petitioner, Kitsap County, of the petition and the public hearing. These actions meet the posting noticing requirements outlined in RCW 35.79.020 and our Port Orchard Municipal Code 12.08.020. As of today, staff has received 1 letter in opposition with recommendation of this proposed street vacation. It was provided to the council and the mayor prior to this evening's meeting, as well as provided a copy on the dais for your reading pleasure tonight. Just so that we're all clear, it is a letter from John Lackey, and he is a resident and a homeowner that is adjacent to one of the properties or nearby properties that is being proposed by Kitsap County. It is 709 Smith Street. So again, he, unless the council or the mayor wants me to read it as part of the record, I just wanted to make the council aware that there was a notice received in for the record.
Mr. Lack
He is,
signed up to testify.
yep, and he is also here to testify as well. So with that, because of the objection or written comments did not exceed 50% of the abutting property owners, that the clerk is required to proceed with the public hearing, asking the mayor to open that up. And staff at this time is requesting that the council and the mayor hold the public hearing just for tonight, with a proposed action to follow at a future meeting. Staff and the petitioner are working to prepare the necessary utility easements to address the city's future access of the utilities, and will submit the proposed vacation for approval once the easements are completed. Failed to mention in the staff report as well that the staff is working on obtaining appraisals for the right-of-ways as well. So once we get those in line, the goal is to bring the easements and or appraisals to you all at once. With that, staff recommends the mayor to open the public hearing to take public testimony on the petition to vacate portions of the city right-of-ways as described.
I will be opening a public hearing related to the city right-of-way adjacent to the county campus. Anyone wishing to testify, please step to the microphone and identify yourself for the record, and we'll take your testimony.
Hi, I'm John Lackey, and I sent a letter earlier today. It's 709 Smith Street, it's Yellow House on Smith. It's not owned by Kitsap County, and there are a few properties on Smith. If you take a ruler and measure the distance between Smith and Klein on Smith Street, Kitsap County owns 30% of that. And that is in your packet, the Land Use Committee packet, as Part B, Phase B. So just there's some context of how far out they are from actually developing the project. Ms. Wallace, thank you. I was going to ask you for a map. Thank you. So I don't know if you could see that. There are two areas of concern I have. One is the Austin Avenue is going to be cut in half, and the alley between Austin and Sydney is going to be cut in half. So what that means is it's going to create a traffic hazard. Cars are going to be able to go in the alley, but not go out of the alley. The only way to get out of that alley would be to back out onto Smith Street. Smith Street has no sidewalks. There's a school bus stop on Sydney. A lot of kids go up and down Smith Street to catch the bus. So I don't want to see a situation where a car pulls in, is not going to be able to exit that alley. One of the things I'd like to see the council consider is making that alley have an egress onto Sydney by having it turn to the east. That way cars can still use that alley and not create a traffic hazard. A similar situation with Austin is wider, but a car would have to do a 3-point turnaround, or if a truck goes down Austin, they wouldn't be able to back up. So cutting those streets in half, I don't think that's really been thought through. So back to this phasing. We're asking to vacate these alleys, but I heard a lot of discussion was, well, the county's just going to take the rest of it anyway. But the last improvements in parking around the courthouse and the jail was 20 years ago. So this plan, the Phase A, may be there for another 20 years. So I wouldn't assume that the county is going to proceed with Phase B. The other thing I have a concern about is when these terrible parking lots that we have now, you all know what I'm talking about, up Sydney, the dirt parking lots, the ones south of the courthouse. When those were approved, the county asked for and received exemption from city code. I have a quote. Malcolm Fleming, we brought a proposal to the street committee and showed them what the lots would look like if we complied with the city's code. But we also said, here's an alternative. And that was presented to the city council and the city council approved that. So I just would hate to see those same mistakes happen again. So in summary, the things I'd like to see is that we do need parking. The courthouse has inadequate parking now, and I know there's plans to expand the courthouse. But as a condition of the street vacation request, I'd like the council to consider adding conditions that the county not be exempt from city code, that they do not create a traffic hazard. And the last thing is these derelict houses that are on Sydney, that those are either be torn down or renovated into habitable homes, and any future homes they buy not be allowed to fall in such a state of disrepair. That's a magnet for crime. And as the council sees this and guides this project forward, I just don't want to see the same mistakes happen that have happened in the past. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else wishing to testify on this matter? And if you're online, you could use the raise your hand feature and the clerk would bring you into the meeting. Last call. Right, I will close the public hearing on this matter. To our business items now. First of which is item A, adoption of an ordinance amending the 2023-2024 biennial budget salary table. Mr. Crocker, this is you.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The City of Port Orchard's biennial budget for 23-24 is written to capture revenue and expenses over the fiscal period. Exhibit A of the budget presents personnel positions as well as pay ranges. The ordinance before you tonight would amend the 23-24 biennial budget, Exhibit A, by adding one FTE for the plans examiner / building inspector 2 position, bringing a total FTE count to 2. And I'd actually like to ask our PCD director to speak to this amendment because it's directly for his department.
Yes, thank you. The city for at least the last 13 years has relied on a company called Code Pros for building plan review and inspection services. And that contract was most recently updated, I think, in 2021. The company has a strong preference for doing plan review work and not so much inspection work. And we've been relying on them more and more for inspections and less so for plan review. And so ultimately, after having this brought to our attention in June, we have decided to go our separate ways on our existing contract, which when we look back at our billings for the first 5 months of the year, we used Code Pros for, I think, 103 out of 104 days with an average of 7 hours of inspection per day. And so we have a real need to make this a full-time position rather than relying on consultants that have a hourly wage. We also have been really struggling to find other consulting firms that have on-call inspectors available in our hour. Most of the time, these companies are based in Seattle or Linwood, and you have to pay travel time for somebody to either take the ferry or drive around to Port Orchard. And so we haven't found a real viable option. We are talking with some other jurisdictions still because we do want to have backup inspectors on call. But right now, the most prudent thing based on our current construction activity is to replace the Code Pros inspectors with an FTE inspector level 2 position. And that's what's been presented here tonight.
Thank you, Nick. With that, the finance director would recommend adoption of the ordinance.
Councilmember Diener.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance amending the 2023-24 biennial budget as adopted by ordinance number 46-22 and amended ordinance number 18-23.
Second it.
Motion by Councilmember Diener, second by Councilmember Clausen. I know we continue to add to this department, but the demand is there and we're spending a tremendous amount of money on consultants. So where we can, and it makes sense, we need to do this in-house because we can provide a better customer service experience to our community. So, Councilmember Clausen?
Yeah, I would just add, I had an opportunity to talk with our director about current activity that's going on in the city of Port Orchard and just in the pipeline, we're close to 4,000 living units that are, not all of them are at the permit stage, but this is what we're kind of aware of. So it doesn't look like growth is going away by any means, and certainly without having the availability of a consultant to help us deal with this, I think it's very important that we try to staff up for it and be able to do it in-house.
Councilmember Trenary.
Yeah, Nick, can we all assume that we'll see an expedited permit process and with this new employee?
No, but we will prevent the department from going to having people. Right now, we aim to get an inspection out within 48 hours. Without having this inspector available, we're looking at 5 days on scheduling. And so it's really about making sure that when we can get inspectors to sites when they're needed. We still have a substantial bottleneck at our permit intake point, and that is related to the code changes that take effect at the end of October. We're getting batches of 20 to 40 permits at a time from builders who are trying to vest to current codes. And so we just have a huge pile of work that those builders may not even intend to break ground until next year, but they're trying to get them through the door now. So we have plenty of permits on a desk waiting for review, which will eventually need to be inspected.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rose Pepe.
Nick, how do you see this playing out in hiring of the individual? In other words, is this going to be, are people available to hire, or is this going to be a protracted hiring?
Well, I feel very fortunate. When we hired a plans examiner, inspector 2 position at the beginning of the year. And right after we made an offer to that person, we had a really qualified candidate apply, but it was past our interview cutoff, and so we weren't even able to consider them. We have now interviewed that person, and they are interested in taking the job. And so, contingent on city council approval of the FTE, we believe we found our candidate for this position. And I feel very fortunate because a lot of cities have open plan review and inspection positions and are not finding qualified people. So I think we're going to be in pretty good shape.
Okay, thank you.
So basically, we have a candidate waiting to give notice.
Understand.
Based on this action.
Yep.
Councilmember Diener.
Nick, you had mentioned that you're also working with other jurisdictions for additional capacity. I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, we've reached out to some of our neighboring jurisdictions. The one that has an interest, Gig Harbor, they had a lot of subdivisions that were being built over the last 5 years, and most of those subdivisions are now built out. And so they actually have an open building inspection position, and they're debating whether they're going to fill that or not because they have slowed down just because they have far less available land than we do. And so they're potentially interested in having an agreement where if they need help, somebody's on vacation or leave, we can help them out. And if we need help, they may have people that are available to come help us. And so that's something that we want to explore more as a redundancy. We are also talking to a few other firms. They are not the least expensive firms, but we'd like to have an on-call for inspections that we don't want to use it unless it's an emergency, or perhaps when Kitsap Bank, the mass timber construction building, comes forward. None of our inspectors have a lot of experience doing that type of inspection. And so we'll probably still have to use specialists for projects of that nature. But the person that we've hired has good single family, multifamily inspection experience, and will really lighten the load for our building official who's spending most of her days in the field right now.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Just one more comment. This is something that we've been looking at for years in the finance committee. And, not only does the demand, I think, help drive this decision, we have to be able to provide the service to our constituents. But if you look at the revenues that are associated with this, I mean, we are collecting significantly more revenue, not only more than budget, but than the cost of this. And so this is really us flexing up to meet that demand. And I think it's entirely appropriate to do so.
All right, you'll be voting on the adoption of an ordinance amending the 2023-2024 budget and salary table. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the ordinance passes. We're to item B now, adoption of a resolution approving mayoral appointments to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. Ms. Wallace?
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council. As you may recall, earlier this evening, we were emailed a amended staff report and amended resolution for you to review, as well as a printed copy is for you on the dais. So I'll be reading from the amended staff report. So pursuant to Port Orchard Municipal Code 2.22 and RCW 67.28, the City Council shall review the membership of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee annually and then make appropriate changes by recommendation of the mayor. The committee shall consist of at least 5 members, and the membership shall include at least 2 members who are representatives of businesses required to collect the tax, and at least 2 members who are persons involved in activities authorized to be funded by the revenue received under this tax, and 1 member shall be an elected official of the city serving as the chair. The mayor is recommending a representative from the following to serve on the LTAC committee upon the council's acceptance. The business required to collect the tax, the mayor is asking you to appoint Ms. Howe's Bed and Breakfast, as well as Smitty's Coop LLC, which is an Airbnb. And an organization involved in activities, he is recommending that you appoint, that you confirm his appointment of the Port Orchard Bay Street Association, as well as the South Kitsap Chamber of Commerce. On January 25th, 2022, council adopted resolution 16-22, appointing Councilmember Kuchardi as the chair of the committee. Staff is recommending that the council confirm the mayor's appointments of these members and reappoint the chair as stated.
Councilmember Kuchardi.
Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution confirming the mayor's appointment of a representative from Mrs. Howe's Bed and Breakfast and Smitty's Co-op LLC as businesses required to collect the tax, and Port Orchard Bay Street Association and South Kitsap Chamber of Commerce as organizations involved in activities to serve on the Lodging Tax Committee, and to reconfirm the appointment of Councilmember Kuchardi, myself, as chair of the committee.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Kuchardi, and I'll give the second to Councilmember Trenary. It's really, none of our hotels want to volunteer for this process. It's really challenging. I wish I had, 12 people on this committee, but I'm thankful that we've got 4. So that's why this was added at the 11th hour. We really only had 1 that was willing to do it. So I'm thankful that another a hotelier, or in this case, a bed and breakfast, step forward, and which allows us to put another nonprofit on the committee. So, Councilmember Chang.
Can you tell me a little more about where Smitty's Co-op is located? I wasn't familiar with.
End of the boulevard.
Port Orchard Boulevard, or what?
Yes. Yes. It's Annette Stewart's the proprietor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who's
Next to
serves
the
on our
house that
planning
had the-
commission.
Near West Street?
Oh,
At the base of Port Orchard Boulevard.
Near West Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, next to the house that has the burnt roof.
Oh, good.
Other questions? All right, you guys will be voting on adoption of a resolution approving the mayoral appointments to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the appointments have been confirmed. Got an exciting moment here. Item C, adoption of resolution appointing our new Public Works Director, Dennis Lund. So Dennis Ryan, sorry, I got Debbie Lund at the microphone.
All of our short last names. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Port Orchard Municipal Code 2.08 empowers the City Council to confirm mayoral appointments to several positions before the appointments can be effective. Due to an employee departure, the city's recently concluded recruitment for the Public Works Director, which is one of those appointed positions. Public Works Director position was vacated in July 2023. The city conducted a competitive recruitment. After interviews, reference checks, and background checks, the mayor has selected an applicant, Dennis Ryan, a candidate qualified to fill the role of the Public Works Director. Mr. Ryan brings extensive experience to the position and for the city, most recently serving as the Director of Park Services for the Peninsula Metropolitan Park District. And the resolution for your consideration tonight would confirm the mayor's appointment of Dennis Ryan to the position of Public Works Director. And Mr. Ryan has taken the evening to come and join us for tonight, and he is in the audience if you would like to meet him.
Maybe we'll get a motion and a second on the floor and then have Dennis introduce himself. Councilmember Diener?
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution confirming the mayor's appointment of Dennis Ryan to the position of Public Works Director.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Diener, a second by Councilmember Lucarelli. Dennis, you want to step up to the microphone? Tell us maybe a little bit about yourself.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and fellow council members. My name is Dennis Ryan. As Ms. Lund mentioned, I was previously with the Peninsula Metropolitan Park District. Prior to that, I was with the city of Camas in Southwest Washington for 12 years in the Public Works Operations Division. And prior to that, I was at Clark County Public Works since 1994. So thank you for the opportunity to be here before you tonight. I am looking forward and excited to be such a part of such a great team. I'm grateful and I'm honored for the opportunity to serve the city of Port Orchard in the capacity of Public Works Directors. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any
But
questions
thank
for
you.
Dennis? Go ahead, Councilmember Rose Pepe.
Besides welcome, Dennis, when's your start date?
September 25th, if approved.
Awesome.
Yeah, you guys have a role on this.
No, I understand that. I was like, I wasn't hoping that, the beginning of the year or something like that.
No, we've been anxiously awaiting this
Yes.
date. Other questions or comments?
Just welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Jackie's been a fabulous job keeping the chair warm over there for you. Actually do more than that. We've got a great team. I'm happy to that you're joining us. I think you'll find this very rewarding if you like to be busy.
Yeah, very dynamic time.
I'm very much looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, you'll be voting on the adoption of a resolution approving the appointment of Public Works Director. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, congratulations, Dennis.
Welcome, Dennis.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome. Yeah.
All right,
Right?
we are to our meeting minutes of August 8th. Is there a motion to approve? Councilmember Lucarelli.
I move to approve the August 8th council meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lucarelli, it's second by Councilmember Clausen. I see two abstentions, Councilmember Kuchardi and Councilmember Diener, I believe. Any corrections or modifications to the minutes? Okay, all in favor of approving those August 8th meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And two abstentions. All right, don't have any discussion items. Council committee reports. Let's start with Economic Development Tourism. You're meeting on the 18th, I see, or has that been changed? I thought.
Been changed.
Okay, there was some email activity about that. Anybody recall when that meeting's been moved to?
We haven't set a date to this point.
Okay, but that meeting will be moved to a different date.
Correct.
Utilities met this evening. Is there a report?
We do have one. The Foster pilot project that we've been talking about all along is actually moving forward. There's an agreement in concept, and we're talking about reports of examination being filed this fall. Hoping the asset management.
Can I so we had a positive meeting earlier this week? My goodness, Jackie, I cannot believe it. Can you just elaborate for everybody on that?
Now, or do you want to wait for my?
We'll wait for I can't control myself. I'm just dumbfounded.
We were equally as excited.
It's like what?
All right,
Right.
please continue. I'm just dumbfounded.
I know it really. So I think I will skip to the metering system update. We're talking about new meters. I believe they're over. on the
Examples over
meter
there, yeah.
Here. Pretty exciting. We're looking to have meters that can be read probably either by a radio read or cellular, depending on what's decided. It's a smart metering system, which eliminates staff reading that can eliminate up to 2 staff members just by having this in effect. It looks like we're going to be purchasing 60 of these units. And no,
Well, I just want to clarify. That doesn't mean that we can get rid of two people. It means we can put
Exactly.
them elsewhere.
Yeah, I was gonna catch that. There's
Thank you.
lots of things to
Sorry,
do.
we're not ditching to.
We're gonna reallocate those staff hours to fix potholes and other things.
Dennis
Right.
hasn't even
So-
started his job yet.
We've just reduced your staff. But these new meters will be installed coming up and in several locations where it's being figured out now. There will be 30 installations, it sounds like, coming up. And we'll be testing how they go. But that's something that Jackie just let us know an hour before this meeting. Mostly, I think that's the gist of what the meeting is about tonight. We didn't have a lot of time to prepare this, but I think Jackie will be elaborating on more in her staff report.
And one of the things that the finance department and Public Works and I have been talking about is we've got still some old, manual read meters. We've been updating to our touch read meters for 10 plus years. And to really achieve the efficiencies that we want, we need to knock this project out in a year or two and not drag this out for 10 or 15 years. So you'll likely be seeing, we've got also have some requirements related to potholing and confirming that we don't have lead pipes in the city. So you're probably going to see a couple of staff, a team of new staff members that will first do the lead pipe verifications and then transition them into this project. And that'll be their sole purpose versus, pulling a couple people out of the existing crew. A water line breaks or in the police department or out on the street somewhere and everybody it's all hands on deck type stuff. We'll have a crew just doing this project so that we can realize that efficiencies, but more to come in the budget process.
And apparently there's a lot of control right from City Hall then for what goes on with those meters.
From the customer side and our side, instead of waiting till we read their meter to discover they have a leak, we'll be able to notice it almost instantaneously. So it's a great deal.
I would just add that what was reported that these are far more accurate than the systems that we have out there now that's been there for many years, as well as even the ones that we recently put in, the touch meters. So hopefully we'll be able to better account for the gallons that are going out.
Yeah. All right. Is that it for utilities?
Our next meeting is November 14th.
Okay. And finance was scheduled to meet next week. That meeting has been canceled and we've got a much longer meeting scheduled for October because we'll be reviewing the mid-year review budget process. So that's been scheduled. I think Noah can get that date to Brandy. Transportation meets on the 26th. Chimes and Lights looks like you meet on the 18th, a couple days away. Land use on the 20th and lodging.
Being moved to October 4th.
October 4th, okay. And lodging tax, you have your committee and you have some report for tonight?
Just thank you we've got our committee formed as a result of tonight's vote. And I met with Brandy, Janine and Sean today from IT, and I'm going to let Brandy do the celebration during her staff report, but we've got a great new tool that we're rolling out that will not only benefit the city staff that help manage this process, the committee members that help her evaluate the process, but also the applicants. So I'll give her the opportunity to celebrate her and her team and the work they've put forth here recently. Right. We'll be meeting, I'm assuming probably the first part of October. Applications close the 25th of September, is that right? We'll be meeting shortly thereafter to begin the analysis and presentations of proposals.
Okay. All right. Sewer Advisory, I see you meet in October.
Yes.
All right. That brings us to the mayor's report. We got a couple things here. The splash pad, we are waiting on one part, control panel. Doesn't work without the control panel. So it's been on back order for like a month. I thought we were going to get it in the last week or two. So as soon as we have that installed, we're going to be able to test it, the Department of Health to approve or sign off on it. And maybe we'll be able to turn it on for a couple of weeks this summer, but we're impatiently waiting for the control panel, that all the construction activities done other than plug in the control panel in. As required by policy to update you on policy changes. We continually review job descriptions and we updated police evidence specialist and stormwater coordinator job descriptions this past month. And, you know, we do have a few people in the audience tonight, but, you know, normally we don't have many in the audience, but we had last month off, but the month prior, people are watching our meetings. We had 4,600 views on our YouTube channel last month before last. So our council meetings are being watched anyway and informing the public. You know, we're working with the construction activity. We're working on cleaning out old records. And if you want to take a look at this, these are from 1961, and I have to return them because they're going to the state archivist when we're done talking about them here tonight. You know, a few years back, we became a first-class city from a second-class city. Well, these documents were related to us becoming a third-class city when we were once a fourth-class city in September of 1961. So the changes when we became a third-class city, the mayor was allowed to be paid. We went to a 7-member city council and the council members were allowed to be paid. I'm not sure how much that was back then. We now had an elected mayor, treasurer, and council members. So our treasurer was elected as a third-class city. And the duties of the treasurer and clerk were required to be separated as a third-class city. So anyway, well, my little history moment I always like to provide you guys. And then we had a great meeting, or actually exit conference is what they are, with the state auditors. A couple of council members, Boston and Trinary, attended. We had our 3rd straight year of a clean audit. It was so clean. Normally they've got a recommendation or a best practice to share. They had nothing to share. It was an exceptional job by the finance team. I'm sure Noah's going to talk about that some more, but put a social post out on that today. Hope you saw it, and very proud of our team and the work that they're doing. All right, department heads. Jackie Brown. Oh, Councilmember Clausen, go ahead.
Yeah, let me just jump in before the department heads accuse me, and I would like to also share that exit conference with the state auditor. I've attended many exit conference, and I've got to say this was the most positive exit conference that I've ever attended. Their comments were so positive, and I'm sorry if I'm going to steal your thunder, but because of the cooperation that the staff did with the auditor, we saved $17,000 in what was originally anticipated to be the cost of the audit. But because the staff had everything right there available, provided it to the auditors, just lickety split, that's a very large savings. So I also want to echo the mayor's comments and commend the staff for doing not only the good job they do every year, year in and year out, but this year in particular. So thank you.
I'd vote for you now.
It doesn't have to live in this.
Yes. All right, Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So as you heard a little bit about from Councilmember Lucarelli, that we have made some progress on the Foster pilot project. I say tentatively. We have an agreement in concept with the Squaxin Island tribe in which we have agreed to, if necessary, we don't know how ecology is going to accept a more pliable or flexible right of reports of examination that will allow us, because this plan is going forward for 20 to 60 years of water rights. And so if we and our mitigation and augmentation procedures will ramp up as we need more water as the city grows, if another project that we don't know about today becomes available, we want to be able to pivot and do a project that's more advantageous. For instance, if a property that's at the headwaters of Rocky or Coulter Creek comes available, that we might protect those headwaters rather than spend the money on a riparian replacement project. We'd rather spend the money because it would be more bang for our buck, basically. So that, and in fact, the Squaxin Island tribe is who suggested that we look at a side agreement away from the reports of examination. So we went down that path with Fish and Wildlife and the Suquamish tribe as well, and they were receptive to the idea of it. We did have a couple of challenges with the fact that we've discovered that QA4, the fourth level aquifer, that is not in the Kitsap County groundwater model. And the Suquamish had a lot of trouble accepting us doing mathematical changes to the model that weren't done by the USGS who developed the model to start with. So we finally came to a tentative agreement with them. They still have to get back to us on a couple of points that we agreed to do mitigation and augmentation to the level as though that aquifer weren't there. But the report will be written with it in, because our hydrogeologists could not risk their license to sign a report that didn't talk about an aquifer that we know exists. So, you know, we have made some progress. I'm not sure that we're going to meet the fall deadline that we wanted to get the reports of examination in, but I'm hopeful that we'll get it in before the end of the year. And Ecology is waiting on it. They've contacted me in the last month and said, where are you at? What's going on? So they know it's coming. So hopefully they'll be able to look at it right away and start making comment.
So someday you will get to retire, because I told Jackie she couldn't retire until she finished this project. So
I'm gonna be in a wheelchair before that. No.
No, Jeff, don't say that.
Good work
also-
on a
Nice.
very
I'm-
complicated issue.
I can't believe this. This is really a wonderful moment. Thank you
Yeah,
for
yeah, thank you.
sharing that.
It's been a long time coming and a lot of negotiating. So, well, you know, keep your fingers crossed that we don't end up with another hiccup that, you know,
Wow.
goes sideways. So I also wanted to let you know that we'll be out to bid for the asset management tracking program, the computerized maintenance management system. That should be hopefully within a month, or 6 weeks, you'll see a contract for that. We should be out to bid before too awful long. And also report to you that like NOAA, we had a survey or an audit, if you will, by the State Department of Health Office of Drinking Water for the McCormick Woods water system, called a sanitary survey. And we came through it with flying colors, no problems. While the state was here, they did an examination of our well 11 funding, because the engineer for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund was here as well. Passed that with flying colors. And I also had an opportunity to just show her where we are now applying for more pre-construction money or planning dollars to move the treatment and settling basin for well 7 over to the site itself. And she was very positive about that and indicated there were still planning dollars available. So all very positive.
Okay. You know, and I forgot we haven't met in a while. If you didn't notice, there's scaffolding around the building and it's tough to miss. And I should have asked Councilmember Clausen, because when I told him this, he was like, of course. What we discovered is the top of the clock tower is actually copper shingles, and it's a 100-year roof. And so part of what that additional scaffolding up there is so that we can inspect that roof, and we got a good report. So there's going to be some nice savings on that related to there's some flashing that needs to be done, but that's going to be huge savings to us to not replace that. Councilmember Clausen?
Well, there's one other thing that scaffolding is could provide for, and that's the reinstallation of the weather vane that's up there.
Yep. The whaling ship, I don't know, 15 years ago, 12 years ago, took off in a storm, and we've had the replacement in a box out at Public Works, and we found it when the nobody wanted to go back up there. You know, it's about 8 stories to the top of that, and reinstall it. So yes, we're going to be able to reinstall the whaling ship that's chasing the whale that's on top of the professional building next door. So
Wow, that's cool.
Mr. Crockett.
Well, the mayor and council member Clausen took a little bit of my thunder. I do want to circle back on the audit itself. As a finance director, having a clean audit like this means a lot because it's a reflection of what we're doing as a city, as a management team. I'm talking about all the directors up here, as my staff, and as the council leadership. So please go read the audit, take a look at all the areas that they probed, and think about all the changes and growth that we've gone through over the last 6 years since I've been here. And we've had staff and revenue and billing department, staff in the public works department, all the capital projects that we have going on, all the grant funding, the loan funding. We're talking $50 million plus. Police department recently embraced body cameras and going through that procedure and procurement process. And if you look at the audit, those are the things that they're testing. They're testing how we handle payroll, opportunities for fraud, what are our internal controls. Did we apply all the grant funding appropriately as we're required to through state and federal laws? And this is really a team effort. I mean, my department takes a lot of credit, but I got to talk to my management team every day about things that they're proposing, doing to make sure that we're on track for a clean audit. So this is really a proud moment for me and my department and the city as a whole. To have it for 3 years in a row, a clean audit, it's unheard of. So fingers crossed we can do it again next year, but fabulous results, super thrilled about it. And I want to thank SAO for their work, and we were able to save $17,000. And I want to tell you another reason why we were able to do that, why we were so efficient, is because, again, this city council and management team have embraced technology over the last couple of years. When I'm talking about Laserfish, I'm talking about Tyler, I'm talking about all the software programs. We're trying to make ourselves more efficient, pull data, and be able to communicate them more effectively and quicker through electronic emails or dropping files. This city council has been really supportive of all our efforts. So thank you. And you're going to continue to see huge growth in those areas, as Council Member Kichardi talked about with just LTAC. So huge improvements, huge strides. The other part about the audit, it's timing. So we're again prepared to go and issue some bonds for the City Hall project. And having a clean audit is a great story to tell your rating agencies. And that will have an impact on our borrowing rates. It's hard to say what it is, but I can tell you if it went the other way, it wouldn't be so pretty. So again, another great bullet point we can share with the rating agencies when we meet with them in about a month or so, which I did want to mention, leads me into next week. We'll talk about the bond delegation ordinance at the study session, and then hopefully at the end of the month, adopt that. And those are the couple things I want to comment on. Thank you.
Mr. Bond?
Yeah, I had two announcements tonight. First of all, over the weekend, I emailed you. I had the pleasure of sitting through a presentation by the author of a book titled Homelessness is a Housing Problem last week. And this week, Noah and I are working on putting together staff reports to inform our multifamily tax exemption discussion at next week's work study meeting. And I would just encourage you to watch the video. It's about 30 minutes once you get through the intro and skip the questions at the end. In addition to sitting through it on Wednesday, last week I've watched it 3 additional times, and I just keep taking more and more away from it as I listen to it. They also presented recently at the Kitsap County Association of Realtors, and so it's a very current topic in housing. The other thing I wanted to announce, today we had a really productive meeting with MultiCare about a proposed medical facility in the city of Port Orchard, and I don't normally report on pre-application meetings, but this one was particularly exciting. There is a proposed facility that would include emergency beds on Sedgwick in Port Orchard, and so they have a very professional team, and they seem very eager to get a project completed in Port Orchard. So that's exciting news. And we're also we're meeting with Home Depot tomorrow about their Bethel site. So some pretty exciting projects moving forward in Port Orchard.
Yeah, that multi-care facility too. I understand it's 2 buildings. One is the emergency facility, and then behind it is a medical building, and it'll have a behavioral health unit in it, so which is much needed everywhere. Yeah, but also here in Port Orchard. So it'd be great to have that expertise and treatment facility here in Port Orchard. Ms. Archer.
Thank you. Nothing to report this evening. Thanks so much.
All right. You're the only one so far. Chief?
Well, I always have something. I just wanted to report on where we're at with staffing. So we did have another officer start on Wednesday of last week. Keeping in mind, I say officer, he is still pre-academy. We have a young man that we hired in April who had his time bumped up and is finally going to the academy in September. So he leaves Thursday of next week. I don't know why they're doing it on a Thursday for their start date, but they are. But that means that from date of hire to when they come out and they go through our training program, it's about 13 months. with the inclusion now of that secondary academy that's on the east side of the mountains, we're hoping that will make a difference. We're gonna have to work through a few things to see if that's viable. If that is viable, that will bring our time from hire to when they are fully deployable to about 8 to 9 months. So we are at the level of staffing that I had when I first got here in 2019. So we're getting caught up. We have a number of folks in background. I just don't like to talk about it because it jinxes who we have in background. So I will keep you guys all in the loop, but thank you.
Ms. Wallace?
Yeah, so Councilmember Kucharty mentioned that we're streamlining our processes for lodging tax this year. And so I wanted to share with the council a glimpse of what they have authorized staff to do as far as Laserfish. You've heard about Laserfish for a while, and Finance Department has developed some things that maybe members of the public already see. But I can tell you this is the first that the public will see from the clerk's office, and more to come. So I'm going to share with you how the lodging tax process will work this year with the public. So normally you have a 6 to 8 page application that you fill out and submit it to the clerk along with your documents. So this one, they just go to the City of Port Orchard's website. The previous applicants have all received public notice that this is the format that we're going to be using, and also give them notice that we're accepting application and for how long. And so rather than me sending them a PDF version of an application, they got a link to this platform here. And so it's pretty much laid out like the application. You have the top part that tells us what year it's for and the amount that it's being eligible to be awarded. And then we have our application deadline, our standard spiel of what to do and what not to do. And then you can click next, or you can come up here where now we want the applicant's information. So this talks about the organization's name, all the information, what type of organization they are, more about them. And then when they're done, they can click next. And then they can go and talk about their project. And again, this just mimics the paper format that we have done and used for the last couple of years. So nothing's changed on here other than it's just digitized. How's that? They have the ability to upload files when it's needed and directed to on the application. Again, another subject of the application is what their budget looks like. They can go ahead and put their sources and the amounts, and it'll do a total for them, so they don't have to get the calculator and still transpose numbers somehow, right? So that'll do it for you. And then also talks about more depth of their budget. Again, more questions, and then go to the last piece, and it talks about our disclaimer, and then their reported requirement that's required by the state, and then they can sign it and submit it. So it's all digital. You just upload their documents. It'll come to me. I'll review them. The next phase we're still finalizing, but we'll be up and running by time the committee meets. So I will receive these applications, gather them, send them off to the committee. The committee will rate them based on the strategic plan that the council has adopted. And there's a series of 10 or 11 questions that says, hey, is this a first-time event? Is this putting heads in beds? Whatever the outline of the strategic plan called for, it's in there. They rate it, put comments. It'll come back to me, and then I share all of that information with the chair and the committee, and we talk. We schedule a meeting and we talk about everything that we saw, and provide a recommendation to the council. So it's a little less paper, more thought behind how the applicants are rated strategically versus in person and talking about it. It's, you can follow the path of how we got there and how the committee is providing this recommendation to the council. So that is what I have for you as how the clerk's office is embracing technology and Adobe, or not Adobe, Laserfish, that we have invested so much time and energy and money into. So this is the first process. The goal by the end of the year is to get our special event application finalized and in the same manner, as well as all of our other applications. So that is what I have to share. If you have any comments or questions or improvements, please send me an email. I'll be happy to take that under consideration and get it out there.
Love
And
it.
other than that, that's all I have.
I love electronic processes. All right, Ms. Lund, do you have anything to report?
It's been a little while since I've spoken to you about the activities of the Employee Inclusion Commission, so I just wanted to give you just a very brief update. We have been at work that we have about 10 employee volunteers serving on that committee right now. And they're really having to build this from the ground up for what we're trying to do here. There's not a lot of models out there. So we've been working on mission statements, vision statements. The commission has agreed to 4 separate goals. And at the end of this month, we're going to have a 2-hour working lunch and brainstorm how we're going to achieve those goals. So after that work is completed, I'll be able to provide you with a more formalized report, maybe bring the chair of our commission here to a meeting for you. So probably in the next couple of months, but it's moving forward. It's been a little bit of a scheduling challenge, especially through the summer months, but we're back at it at the end of this month, and it's really exciting work, and I think you'll like the outcome of that. So I wanted to give you that update.
Thank you. All right, we're to our second citizen comment period. Members of the public have up to 3 minutes to provide comment to the city council. If you're wishing to address the city council, please step to the microphone and identify yourself for the record. And anyone online that wishes to address the council, use the raise your hand feature, and Kirk will bring you into the meeting. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. My name is David Cruz. I'm here today to talk about Aphrodisia Boutique, the adult shop that's located in our community. I want to make it clear that I have no issue with the business itself. I believe that people should have access to the products and services that they need, and that includes adult toys and other adult products. However, I do have concerns about the way the store is currently operating. The storefront is very visible and it displays suggestive images. I feel like this can be upsetting and uncomfortable for some people, especially children and families. A simple way to address this concern is something more discreet than the beads that they currently have up in the windows. This would help to reduce the visibility of the store and would help to make the store more respectful to the community. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Ms. Wallace, I see you have one hand raised online. I'm going to bring that one in.
I see Mr. Kimball's hand raised. I'm not sure if his microphone is.
Yeah.
Oh,
Can
there
you-
you go.
Okay.
I was
go
waiting
ahead.
for the invite, sorry. Dave Kimball from Manchester. First, a shout out to the mayor for, I had talked to him on the phone some time ago about this almost 100-year-old redwood up on Mitchell and Taylor. And what I hear from my contact is that there's going to be a compromise by the orthodontist to actually change the access to his office without having to cut down that tree, which I think is another well done to the code and the folks that are going to make a motion, I guess you folks there on the council, to allow that modification to code. Hope I'm not speaking prematurely. The other comment, not so warm-hearted, is backing up Mr. Cruz, that I think anyone that puts up hippie beads in a window so people can walk by and look at sex toys needs to be in a different town. I don't think Port Orchard's quite ready for that. I don't know why they're not in Bremerton or Silverdale, but it's common sense. although they can get by with, the law, whether they're in a gray area or not, or I read the RCWs, I'm not sure I agree, but good common decency for their community is not to have that kind of sales by window shopping by any age group that happens to walk by there, and not so much next to DOC where they have registered sex offenders walking or have access there. It just seems like just a bad combination. So maybe they can compromise before they get people lobbying against them, and put some curtains up and just be decent about it. That was really all I had. But again, thanks, Mayor, for the tree. Bye.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else wishing to address the city council this evening? Step to the microphone.
Hi, Mayor and Council. My name is Holly Cruz. On September 6, 2023, I contacted Nicholas Bond, Developmental Director for Port Orchard, regarding the location of the adult novelty shop Aphrodisia Boutique. I was informed that the store falls under a retail entertainment and not adult entertainment because the store supposedly doesn't sell erotic books, magazines, film, etc. What bothers the community the most is the fact that the store is allowed in close conjunction with respectable family businesses, as well as the Department of Corrections that works directly with sex offenders. One officer stated his concern in the POI, which is the Port Orchard Independent, stating this could be triggering for individuals. Individuals we are supposed to be protecting from assaulting again, especially minors. The city of Port Orchard should find this to be a logical part of planning for this particular store, which I may add, quote unquote, was not welcomed in Bremerton because they do have perimeter ordinances. I guess you can say they care more about their community and what innocent eyes and minds are exposed to. All departments involved in the approval should have considered the mental health of these individuals as well. Many in the community who are not afraid to speak up have emphasized that placing curtains over the windows would be a fair compromise for all to start, as sexuality isn't the basis of one's identity, nor gives the right to allow quote unquote sex nerds to act incredibly complacent to the rest of the community for the sake of selling sex. The city's decision is a poor representation of positive leadership, and all should take that into consideration at the election polls. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else wishing to address the council? Step to the microphone and identify yourself for the record.
Hello, my name is Andrea Jansen. I am a concerned parent, and I am speaking out on behalf of other parents and myself against the Aphrodisia Boutique. It is astonishing to me that I have to stand up here and say that sex shops are not for children. Bondage and dildos are not for children. Sex shop owners are not certified child educators, and they do not have age-appropriate learning environments to be teaching children about sex. These self-proclaimed sex nerds are not trained to give education to children. And what are they allowed to do under the guise of education? I, for one, myself and my family will not be traveling downtown because the shop is open and what they are on display visible to families and the community is unacceptable. This will hurt other businesses located in the vicinity, as other families also will not travel to that area for shopping. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else wishing to address the city council? Anybody online? All right, I'm going to close the second citizen comment period. We are to good of the order. Is there any good of the order? Councilman Clausen.
I don't know if I want to classify it as good, but it's certainly of order. And I just wanted to share, which I think we're all aware of, that the community just lost a pillar recently with the passing of Dick Villis, who with Villis Motors over here, and he had been a member of our community and a solid member of our community for so many years that I just wanted to acknowledge that I think the community is going to be a little bit less without Dick's always smiling face and all of his warm comments that he would always share with anybody that came in. So,
yeah,
thank you.
Good man. He'll be missed. Councilman Lucarelli.
This past weekend, we were down at the farmer's market. The city had a booth to educate the public about concerns or some changes that are going to be made to the comprehensive plan. And I think it was wonderful to actually be out there, to mayor and department heads who thought this would be a good idea. I can only affirm that it was fabulous to have the public coming up to us, asking questions, engaging. I have never enjoyed myself so much. It was really a lovely time. And talking about roundabouts, priorities. I mean, it was just wonderful to be able to share what's going on, hear some of the concerns, and to have that exchange. So great idea. Thank you for putting it together. Nick, thank you for being there. I loved all the minutes.
Yeah, I thank you for bringing that up. I'd forgotten. We've had so much going on that it's the third Saturday we've been down there, twice for the planning department, primarily talking about our comprehensive plan, and then we had the engineering team. And I've had a few council members join me and staff, and very, very positive experience, the outreach, the communication. You know, of course, everybody's upset about the state's roundabout project. We heard a lot about that. You know, and we've had some good communication with staff at DOT about that and reprogramming those lights. But one of my frustrations is you should work every day of the week when they got the street closed, but it's not our project. But we did share that feedback too. Any other good of the order? All right. Thank you. It's a little bit of a long meeting, but we hadn't met in a while.
Good
So
meeting.
meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.